What if your favorite color wasn't an aesthetic preference, but rather a confession you never had the courage to make out loud? It's a curious thing. We ask what someone's favorite color is as if it were merely a matter of taste, of beauty, of visual preference. But Alan Watts understood something that goes unnoticed by most. The color you choose isn't about what your eyes like. It's about what your soul can no longer hide. Think about it. When you say you love blue, red, or green, you're not selecting a shade. You're announcing a desire that your social body never allowed you to whisper. Because we don't choose colors. Colors choose to reveal who we are when all masks fall. And here's the paradox that Watts saw so clearly. We think color is about beauty. But in reality, color is about permission. Let that sink in for a moment. Your favorite color isn't what you like. It's what you're allowed to be. It's the fragment of authenticity that survived years of social conditioning, decades of be this way, don't be that way, of this is appropriate, that is excessive. It's the only space where you can still say, I am this, without apologizing. Because you see, we live in a constant performance. Since childhood, you've learned which emotions are acceptable, which desires are appropriate, which version of you is worthy of love and approval. And over time, you began to police your own desires before anyone else could judge them. You don't need an external censor. You've become your own guardian. But color? Color escapes. Color is that crack in the wall of social prison. Because when someone asks, what's your favorite color? There's no moral judgment attached. There's no right or wrong. There's no that's too much or that's inappropriate. And in that seemingly innocent space of permission, something profoundly true leaks out. Alan Watts always insisted that the appropriate self is a performative fiction, that we spend our entire lives constructing an acceptable character, repressing everything that is wild, spontaneous, uncontrollable. But this repression isn't free. It costs you your vitality. It costs you your authenticity. It costs you contact with who you really are when no one is watching. And that's where color enters as an involuntary confession. When you choose red, you're not selecting a shade. You're announcing a hunger your soul refuses to whisper. Red isn't just a color. It's raw desire, unedited passion, intensity you've learned to call too much. Red is the me you repress at family gatherings, that you soften in public, that you dilute to fit others' expectations. Red is the version of you that wants to devour life without asking permission. But you don't say that, do you? You just say, I like red, and think you're talking about aesthetics. Meanwhile, your soul is screaming, I want to feel. I want to burn. I want to be intense without having to apologize for it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth that Watts understood. Color doesn't lie. People lie. Words lie. Social performances lie. But color? Color is the language of the unconscious. It's what you can't fake because it's beyond rational control. You can say, I'm fine when you're destroyed inside. You can smile while feeling like you're disintegrating. You can claim, I am strong, while carrying a silent, paralyzing fear. But you can't fake your favorite color, because it doesn't emerge from your social brain. Instead, it springs from a deeper layer before language, before approval, before the fear of being judged. It comes from the unauthorized you, and this brings us to the paradox of permission. We don't lack desires. We lack permission to acknowledge these desires. From early on, we learned that certain impulses are dangerous, that certain intensities are unacceptable, that a certain version of ourselves needs to be kept locked away so we can be loved. So you lock it up. You hide, you perform. But color? Color is the key you didn't know you were still holding. Think about how this works. No one will judge you for loving blue. No one will say you're being too blue. There's no social consequence in admitting your chromatic preference. And it's precisely in this absence of judgment that truth blossoms. Blue is the exhaustion of carrying a mask that never rests. But this isn't said, because saying it out loud would be admitting that you're exhausted by the pressure of being constantly adequate, constantly acceptable, constantly in conformity. And that admission brings consequences. It brings questions. It brings the possibility of being seen as weak, as problematic, as someone who isn't well. So you silence yourself, and color speaks for you. This is what Watts saw when he looked beyond social appearances. He saw that the mask isn't just something you put on, it's something you become. And over time, you forget there's a real face underneath it. You begin to believe that the mask is you, but color remembers. Color knows. When you look at your favorite color, you're looking at the self that would be possible if no one were watching you, if there were no expectations, if there were no fear of disappointment, if there weren't the constant negotiation between who you are and who you should be. Your favorite color is your unauthorized self. It's the version of yourself you buried to survive socially. It's the desire you transformed into aesthetic taste because that was the only safe way to keep it alive. And here's where this gets even deeper. You're not just hiding desires from others. You're hiding them from yourself. Because recognizing these desires, giving them voice, allowing them to exist fully, would destabilize the entire carefully constructed structure of your acceptable self. It would be admitting you're hungry when you should be satisfied, that you want rest when you should be producing, that you crave intensity when you should be balanced, that you want to be seen when you learn that being invisible is safer. So you call it your favorite color and move on. And every time someone asks, you answer with the innocence of someone talking about visual preference. Meanwhile, you're making a profound confession about who you really are beneath the social performance. But here's what Watts understood that conventional psychology completely misses. Each color carries a specific forbidden desire. It's not just any suppression. It's not a generic repression. It's the exact map of what you had to sacrifice to be accepted. And when you look at that map, when you recognize what your color is revealing, something shifts. Because suddenly you realize that what you've called taste your whole life was actually resistance. It was the only form of rebellion you managed to keep alive. Your favorite color is the part of you that never completely surrendered. It's the last stronghold of authenticity in a world that demands conformity. It's the silent whisper of the soul saying, I'm still here, I still exist. And one day you'll allow me to be more than a color preference. One day, you'll allow me to be who I really am. But here's what Watts understood that most people completely ignore. So what does your color confess about the desire you buried? Remember, this isn't merely aesthetics. This is an archaeology of the authentic self. Alan Watts saw colors as emotional coordinates on a map that most people refuse to read. He understood that each color choice isn't just visual preference, it's a confession of what you're exhausted from pretending you don't feel. And when you start seeing colors this way, everything changes. The confession of red on the surface. Red screams passion, energy, boldness. It's the color people associate with emotional intensity, with life lived unfiltered. But here's the hidden truth. Those who choose red aren't seeking passion, they're confessing exhaustion with moderation. Watts understood this deeply. He spoke about the hunger to stop performing balance, to stop moderating every impulse, every desire, every genuine reaction. Red is the color of permission to finally be excessive. Think of it as an emotional signature. It's not I am passionate, it's I'm tired of pretending I'm not. And here's the devastating paradox. You don't love red because you're passionate. You love red because you're exhausted from pretending you're not. Red is the silent scream of the soul that spent years whispering polite answers when it yearned to shout inconvenient truths. It's the color of those who smiled through suffocating meetings while feeling their chest constrict with unspoken words. Watts would say, red isn't the color of passion, it's the color of permission. Permission to stop apologizing for feeling intensely. Permission to stop diluting your truth into socially acceptable doses. The confession of blue. Now look at blue. Calm, stability, trust. The color that promises peace in a chaotic world. But here's the truth that blue confesses. Blue isn't about peace, it's about permission to stop performing strength. Those who choose blue aren't seeking calm. They're confessing the exhaustion of appearing unshakable. Watts saw this clearly. He spoke about the emotional weight of always being the rock for others, of never being able to fall apart, of having to maintain composure while inside everything crumbles. Blue is the color of allowing yourself to need rest. It's the confession of those who spent years being everyone's safe harbor but never had permission to seek their own. It's the color of those who held everyone together while falling apart in pieces alone. And here's the paradigm-shifting paradox. Blue isn't calm. It's the color of admitting you're tired of being the stable one. Blue isn't the absence of a storm. It's the confession that you've spent so much time calming others' tempests that you've forgotten how to process your own inner turbulence. It's the color of those who desperately need permission to not be okay, to not have all the answers, to not always be the strong one. Watts would say, blue is the color of surrendering to the exhaustion you pretended not to feel. It's permission to finally admit, even if only to yourself, that you also need to be held sometimes. The confession of green, now green, growth, harmony, balance, the color that suggests constant evolution and life in expansion. But the hidden truth is devastating. Those who choose green aren't seeking growth. They're confessing permission to be still. Watts understood this silent rebellion. He spoke about productivity culture. That relentless pressure to optimize, improve, evolve, grow. Always grow. Green is the color of refusing to optimize yourself. It's the confession of those exhausted by the relentless culture of constant upgrading, of feeling compelled to transform every moment into a growth opportunity, of never being able to simply exist without having to justify that existence through measurable, quantifiable progress. Here's the liberating paradox. Those who choose green aren't advancing. They're pausing in a world obsessed with constant optimization. Green isn't the color of ascension. It's the color of the plateau, of radical permission to stop climbing mountains for a moment and simply breathe where you are. It's the confession that you're tired of turning your entire life into a self-improvement project. Watts would say, green is the color of permission to be enough exactly as you are now. Not version 2.0 of you, not the you who will get there eventually. The you of now, imperfect, incomplete, in process, and perfectly valid just like that. The other confessions and the other colors. Each carries its own secret permission. Yellow isn't joy. It's permission to stop performing seriousness. To be lighthearted in a world that takes itself way too seriously. To laugh when everyone expects you to keep a straight face. Purple isn't mystery, it's permission for complexity without explanation. To be contradictory, paradoxical, impossible to categorize into a single digestible identity. Black isn't darkness, it's permission to disappear from the demands of visibility. To not be seen, not be performative, not be available for constant visual consumption. White isn't purity, it's permission for simplicity in a world that values complexity as a sign of depth. To be direct when everyone expects elaboration. The pattern that unites everything. And now you see the pattern, don't you? All colors confess the same central truth. Permission to stop performing. Every color that resonates with you is an area of your life where you're exhausted from acting. Where the mask became too heavy. Where the authentic self is knocking on the door, begging to be acknowledged. Watts taught about the real self beneath the social masks. He said most people spend their entire lives performing approved versions of themselves, while the genuine self suffocates in silence. And here's the validation you need to hear. You're not broken for having these desires. You're human. The tiredness you feel isn't weakness, it's lucidity. It's your internal system recognizing that the performance has become unsustainable, that the price of external approval got too high. Watts would say, the exhaustion of performance isn't the problem, it's the awakening. And your favorite color, it's not just aesthetic preference. It's your soul signature on the permission slip that society never gave you. It's the confession of the desire you buried so deep you no longer even recognized it as yours. It's your truth, painted in pigments, waiting for you to finally have the courage to acknowledge it. But Watts understood something deeper, something that changes everything when you truly comprehend it. Because it's not just about knowing the desire. It's not just about recognizing the color you chose and understanding what it confesses. It's about what you do with that knowledge. And that's where the dangerous freedom of self-permission begins. The part that most people avoid because it requires something society doesn't teach. The courage to stop asking for permission to be who you really are. Now you see what your color confesses. The question Watts would ask, what will you do with this forbidden knowledge? Because knowing that you desire isn't the same as allowing yourself to want. This is where most people stop. At the edge of authentic desire, as if there were an invisible line between recognizing and owning, between knowing and being. Watts described this as the great conflict of human consciousness. It's not ignorance that imprisons us. It's the refusal to allow what we already know to be true. You chose your favorite color long ago. Not today, not in this video. You chose it when you were still a child, before you learned that some preferences are acceptable and others aren't. Before you discovered that the world has opinions about who you should be. The color you love is the vote you already cast. You're just afraid to count the votes. Think about it. Do you feel guilt when wanting something just for yourself? Something that doesn't benefit anyone, doesn't solve any problem, doesn't serve a greater purpose. It just exists because you want it? That's the permission problem, the cognitive dissonance between desiring and allowing yourself to desire. Watts said that society conditions us to need external permission for internal desires, as if we needed approval to feel what we already feel, as if reality depended on validation. But the truth your color reveals is deeper. You are already complete. The desire doesn't need to be justified. It simply is. And here's the devastating insight Watts left us. Your favorite color is the courage you've been calling selfishness. Do you feel it? The tension. That nagging voice insisting, but I can't just do what I want. Why not? Who made that rule? And when exactly did you agree to it and accept this unwritten law as unchangeable truth? Watts wasn't interested in rebellion. He spoke of something more fundamental, self-trust. The capacity to trust yourself without needing an external jury. I'll show you the method he proposed. Not as a formula, but as a practice of liberation. First, recognize the desire without judgment. You've already chosen the color. This fact doesn't need defense. It's neither good nor bad. It simply is. Second, recognize social conditioning as learned, not as truth. The voices that say you couldn't aren't yours. They're echoes. You can listen to echoes your whole life, or you can start speaking with your own voice. Third, grant permission as an act of self-trust, not rebellion. It's not about defying the world. It's about stopping defying yourself. This is the framework of self-permission, and it transforms everything. Because here's the paradox Watts loved to expose. You're not becoming someone new. You're stopping being someone false. Consider the difference. If you need to become authentic, then authenticity is something distant, something to be achieved. But if you simply need to stop pretending, then authenticity is here, now, waiting for you to stop performing. Your favorite color has always been your favorite. You were just hiding your vote, downplaying it as not that important, saying whatever, I don't really care. But it doesn't, does it? You know which one you prefer. You always did. And here we reach the strategic climax, the deepest insight Watts offered us. The authentic self doesn't need to be created. It needs to be prevented from being hidden. Do you feel the weight of this truth? There's nothing to build. There's no improved version waiting. There's only the cessation of performance, the courage to stop acting. This is the moment of greatest clarity. You've invested time, attention, presence, and the reward isn't a formula. It's the liberation of realizing you're already complete. Your color doesn't confess who you should be. It confesses who you already are when you stop lying to yourself. So how do you live this confession? How do you honor what your color revealed in daily life? Watts didn't speak of dramatic revolutions. He spoke of small cessations, small acts of permission aligned with the true desire your color represents. If you chose red and your color confesses the desire for boundaries and autonomy, then the act of living it is simple. Say no to one obligation this week. Just one. Observe what happens when you stop saying yes automatically. If you chose blue and your color confesses the desire for connection and trust, then the act of living it is straightforward. Ask for help without apologizing. Don't justify, don't over-explain, just ask. Observe how people respond when you allow genuine vulnerability. If you chose green and your color confesses the desire for peace and slowing down, then the act of living it is clear. Refuse optimization in one area. Let something be inefficient. Let something be slow. Observe the quietness that emerges when you stop running. Each color has its confession, and each confession has its practice. But here's what matters. You don't need external validation to do this. Permission comes from within. It always has. Watt said something revolutionary about this. He said, "The menu is not the meal. Stop reading about desire and start actually tasting it." You've spent your life reading, analyzing, considering, pondering. Meanwhile, the meal has gone cold. Your favorite color isn't a concept. It's an experience. And experience demands participation, not analysis. So here's the reaffirmation loop Watts left us, and that you need to hear as many times as necessary. You are whole. There's no missing piece. There's no improved version waiting for approval. You are complete now, in this moment, with this color, with this desire, with this truth you've been hiding. You are whole. Not because you deserve it, not because you earned it, but because you always were. Wholeness isn't a prize. It's the natural state. You were only performing incompleteness because you thought you should. Nothing to fix. The voice that says, "When I improve, when I'm worthy, when I achieve," is the echo of conditioning. Watt saw this as the great lie, the idea that you need to be different from what you are to deserve permission. But look at your color. It didn't change. It didn't wait for you to improve. It was always your favorite. Even when you pretended to like another, even when you said it didn't matter. Preference doesn't judge. It simply is. And so are you. You simply are. There's nothing to fix. You are already enough. This is the final truth. The hardest to accept because it contradicts everything we've been taught. Society constantly sells improvement, sells optimization, sells future versions of yourself. But Watts asked, what if you're already enough? What if the entire journey is about realizing this, not achieving it? Your favorite color is enough. It doesn't need to be the most popular color. It doesn't need to make sense to others. It's yours, and that's enough. And you are enough. You don't need to be the version others expect. You don't need to make sense to anyone but yourself. The menu is not the meal, remember? So stop reading and start tasting. Your color is waiting. Your authentic desire is waiting. Not in the form of grand revelation. In the form of small permission. One choice, one no, one yes. One moment of stopping the performance. That's all it takes. Because the authentic self doesn't need construction. It needs cessation. Cessation of the lie, cessation of the performance, cessation of the fear of being exactly who you are. You came here for color psychology. You're leaving with self-permission. That's the gift Watts left us. Not answers, not formulas, but the simple reminder that you already know. You always did. You just forgot you had permission to act based on what you know. Your color is waiting for you to honor its confession. And here's the final affirmation. The self beneath the mask doesn't need your improvement, only your permission. You already are who you are. The only question is, when will you stop pretending you're not? This channel exists to continue this exploration. Watt's wisdom doesn't end here. It unfolds, as he would say, like flow, and you can choose to flow with it or resist. But now you know resistance doesn't protect you. It only postpones. Your favorite color is waiting. Not as a symbol, as practice, as a small act of courage disguised as simple preference. And when you allow that color, when you honor its silent confession, something shifts, not dramatically, not visibly, but profoundly. You stop asking, who should I be? And start noticing who I already am. And that realization, that's the profound liberation Watts articulated throughout his life, not as a distant goal, but as immediate recognition. As the transformative moment when you cease wrestling with your own essence. Your color has confessed. Now the question remains, are you courageous enough to stop pretending,